Hey everyone, emergency recording, emergency scout report. Spurs have signed someone, Austrian center back, that is Kevin Danso from RC Lens Racing Club Lens for around 25 million euros with a contract until 2030. It's big news, everybody. Finally, we have signed a second player, desperately needed, and he looks to be the Dragishin replacement who could be out for a long time here, maybe an ACL injury, at least some type of bad knee injury. So it looks like Spurs have had to act desperately. You think they already desperately needed signings, let's be honest, but they have acted desperately here and brought in Kevin Danso. It looks like to be as a Radu Dragishin replacement. He's a 6'3" right-footed center back with experience in the Champions League for RC Lens, and is also has had some recent experience with the Austrian national team in the Euros. He actually played in their game where they did get knocked out, an epic game though that was against Turkey. He's had a lot of experience in a back three. He's played very well in the center of a back three for their previous manager, Frank Heise, and has also played pretty well in a back three for the current manager of RC Lens, the English manager who you might have heard of before, Will Still, but he also has experience playing as a right-sided center back in a back four under Will Still, as well as also one for Ralf Rangnick in the Austrian national team. He didn't start every game, though, for Austria. I'm a little confused by that because I would say that the competition he has for that right-sided center back spot, it's not really someone who I really rate very highly. It's Maximilian Werber, I think former Leeds center back. Not sure if he's still there at Leeds, but I don't really rate him that highly. And I'm actually surprised that Kevin Danso isn't being picked ahead of him. Spurs fans were definitely desperate for somebody to be signed. It looks like this is, again, a guy that will be a Dragishin replacement. So let me know what you think of that. Did you think we needed still a left-sided center back? Maybe we'll still go for one, but there's only still so much time left. He's been linked with various clubs, by the way, even ones from previous windows he's been linked with. He's kind of been on kind of the radar of various clubs and has kind of been tipped to leave for a while now from Lens. He nearly completed a move, I believe, last January window or maybe over the summer. He nearly completed a move to, I believe it was Roma. And then he's also been on the radar for Bayern Munich. He was one of the other options that they were looking at alongside Radu Dragishin, funny enough. And Kevin Danso was the other one they were looking at. And then Juventus have taken a look at him. Newcastle have taken a look at him. Wolves are the team that we're definitely taking a look at him. We actually just hijacked that move from Wolves, are at the moment current competitors in our relegation battle. So this is everything you need to know, everybody. If you haven't already learned something about Kevin Danso, this is everything you need to know. If you can for me, smash that like button. But let's get straight into this. The only reason I find that a bit worrying is just that if he is being asked to play, let's say, intricate passes to sort of build out from the back or play under pressure if the opposition is trying to put the center backs in the defense under pressure, something that's very common in the Premier League and just in modern football. He doesn't have a high pass completion percentage. That can easily be explained by a variety of factors, but it is something worth noting, right? That going into this Postecoglou team, he is going to need to be tidy on the ball, and that sort of pass completion percentage is something to look at. But when you look at passes into the final third, he's actually ranking quite well there. So it's a bit of a contradiction. You look at the pass completion percentage, it's quite poor, but then you look at the passes into the final third, to get moves started, help sort of get your team up the pitch and into dangerous areas. He's doing a good job there. He's in the 80th percentile, in the top 20th percentile for that department. A weird concern of mine, though, is actually having to do with the fouls committed per match. He's actually pretty much the worst ranked of any of the center backs in Ligue in this department. He's committing over 2.25 fouls per 90 in Ligue, which is definitely a lot when you think about it, right? If he's committing at least two on average per game, that usually could lead to a yellow card or something, and that's something he's going to have to definitely limit when he comes to the Premier League because these referees aren't going to do you any favors over here. In fact, they're probably going to hurt you more than they're going to help you. So he's going to have to be careful when he comes over here. But maybe it shows it's a sign of aggression as well as the sign that he is a guy that is capable of bringing down his man if need be. But it looks like he's going to have to be a bit more clever once he comes to the Premier League. If you actually take a look at his previous seasons, I'm not going to show you the numbers or anything like that, but if you take a look at his previous seasons, in the 2023-24 season, there was actually weirdly a big drop off in some of these numbers that I mentioned just recently that he's been doing really well in. Like weirdly, the passes were, the passing numbers were even worse than the ones I just mentioned. Some of the other numbers were, decently worse than the ones I just showed you there. But that also could be explained by the fact that it could have been the demise of Frank Heise, the very good manager for our Racing Club Lens. A guy that pretty much took them, at least to my memory, from like 2021, 2020, all the way up until like 2023, 24 season. And he was the guy that led them, to the Champions League, sort of brought them up the table in Ligue 1. So it might have just been the fact that since it was his final season, maybe, Danzo just wasn't performing as well. And maybe just that team in general wasn't performing as well. In the 2022-23 season, I believe that was the season they did qualify for the Champions League. He actually looked to have a great season for them by the numbers. Really high passing numbers, really high passes into the final third numbers, really high pass completion percentage number, which is a good sign. And again, maybe a good contradiction to see from the poor pass completion percentage that we just looked at from this year. And the aerial win presence was really high, strong aerial win percentage. So there was definitely some good indicators from that 2022-23 season from FBref. And I've said this plenty of times before. I'll say it again. Do not take stats as everything. Take them as a grain of salt, please, everybody. There's so many different factors, so many different explanations for why a stat may be the way it is. Maybe it's good for a certain reason that can be easily explained. That might not actually be totally credit to the player. It might be more credit to the system. Sometimes you have to explain stats by the style of the play or what the manager is asking of the player. There's a lot of different factors and a lot of different variables that can lead to a stat being a certain number and just a certain metric compared to others. So you really do have to take a lot of it with a grain of salt. And I will say this, I think you also have to know a lot of the context behind certain players' stats so you don't draw too many harsh conclusions. But let's take a look at some of the players and Spurs that we could compare him to. And naturally, we should compare him to who he's probably replacing, which is Radu Dragusin. If you take a look at the numbers of matches played, they're pretty similar, and also minutes played are pretty similar. So I think we can compare them without feeling like, there's too much of a statistical drop off. He does nudge him in pretty much every department of Kevin Danso. What's interesting, though, is that Danso, I would say, is not considered to be a terrific player on the ball or a terrific passer of the ball or anything, but he does nudge Dragusin in those areas. And we both, I think we would consider both teams to be high possession, pretty on the front foot type of sides. There might be some degree of variability there and interpretation, but Lons have some of the most passes completed in the league, fifth most in fact, the second most shots of any league side in their league, and they have the third most key passes, the fourth most progressive passes. So you're talking about a team that is attacking, a team that is possession based, a team that is trying to play some good football. So I think that means then we can sort of compare their passing numbers and their possession numbers quite favorably. And he is playing better than Dragusin in a very possession heavy team, which is a good sign that we're bringing in someone that potentially could be better than Dragusin. I'm not saying that he is, but he should be at least by the numbers. He also has more aerials won than Dragusin, more blocks than Dragusin. You look at both of them, they both look like man mountain of players, but Kevin Danso probably just about as big as Dragusin, but then he also seems to be getting better numbers in the physical department of the game, kind of like putting his body on the line in terms of the blocks, and then also just winning the ball in the air as well. He looks to be a better passer, looks to be a better ball carrier as well. If you look at some of his ball carrying numbers, he seems to have a better aerial presence and looks to just be, from the highlights and everything, and just by the numbers, a more aggressive defender than Radu Dragusin. But again, we can only take this with a grain of salt, and we will find out whether this is true or not. But this is a good sign that, from what I can tell, seems to be a better passer, seems to also just be similar in terms of the physicality that Dragusin brings, and that's a good sign, because you don't want to see Dragusin go and then us not have some sort of man mountain or at least similar type of physical build type center back to replace him with. But now let's take a look at how he compares to the center back that I really like in our team, which is Christian Romero. In terms of the tackles and interceptions, Christian Romero we know is a very, very aggressive defender. He has more in that department, but some of the other defensive metrics, he actually has less than Kevin Danso. That could be maybe during that period, Spurs had a lot of possession and were a very possession heavy based team, because when you had Romero and Mickey Van de Ven back there, you were able, I think, to control games even more, have even more domination of the ball. So then that led to probably fewer and fewer moments where Romero or Van de Ven or others in the back line had to create, or sorry, make defensive actions of any kind, such as blocks, maybe, interceptions, that type of thing. So maybe just providing some context to those stats, but fair play to Danso for, again, being in a possession-based team, very heavy possession-based team, and still getting some good defensive metrics from it. And also you look at the percentage varials won, he's beating Dragusin, who we know is good in the air, and also Romero, who I'd say is probably our best, if not our second best player in the air. At least I think he's better than Mickey Van de Ven. And pass completion percentage, I'm not sure if you're going to really get much better in terms of world football center backs, like general center backs in the world. I'm not sure if you're going to get much better in terms of passing from the back, playing, sort of out from the back, building moves from the back line, and just also just playing passes that are just really difficult from the back line. I think there's nobody better than Christian Romero. I think he's one of the best center backs in the world personally on the ball. So I'm not expecting Kevin Danso to be anywhere close to him or really that comparable to him. But again, the fouls committed pretty high. And when you think about it, right, Romero is someone who has a reputation for being a very aggressive defender, for committing at least, maybe his reputation has it that he commits a lot of fouls. But Kevin Donzo, I mean, committing far, far more. So that is something to be worried about. I would say that is something to take a look at and be worried about. But again, there's some things that you could be positive about the fact that he is getting some better defensive metrics than Romero. But also, I'd say maybe in terms of some of the other maybe metrics like the percentage of aerials won and things like that, is still better than Romero's. And Romero, I think, is a very good center back in the air. For to look at some of the attributes here that he might have and sort of summarize things, I think definitely a very physical center back. You just take a look at him; he's the absolute man mountain physical build. And you look at the numbers, really strong aerial numbers. Also, if you look at even some of his highlights and his compilations, there's some really good ones of the way he attacks that ball from a set piece. Looks to be a really good attacking set piece threat. Just a guy that you don't want to try to get in front of, somebody you don't want to get in the way of if he is battling for an aerial duel. And then he does look to have some speed about him. He looks like he can recover. It looks like he can track back quite well. I don't think he has Mickey Van de Ven pace or anything, but I think he is quite fast. He's definitely one of the more faster center backs that you could go after. Anticipation seems to be pretty good, right? The interception numbers were actually quite strong. They were even comparable to Romero, who I think, is quite good at stepping in front, sort of reading the game, maybe not needing to always put in a tackle, can just sort of step in front of his guy in order to win the ball, and looks to be pretty good in that department. And you saw as well that the blocks were quite high and really, really good in comparison to the other center backs in Ligue 1, which I think is maybe a representation of bravery, right? If someone is able to get a lot of blocks, just be able to put their body on the line like that, shows that they have a bit of bravery about them. And from what I could tell from his compilations and his highlights, and to a degree from some of the numbers, especially from his 2022-23 season, he looked to actually be an all right ball carrier. Not someone that I think is really graceful and pleasing on the eye, but brave. Like, he looks to be someone that has no problem carrying the ball out from the back, just occasionally has a bit of a loose touch on him, which leads me into the weaknesses. I think he has a bit of a clumsiness about him occasionally in possession, either just when he is playing a ball or when he is maybe carrying the ball. Sometimes the touch looks a little loose or a little heavy, but he seems to do fine with that. He's quite comfortable in his body from what I could tell. It's just maybe not as smooth looking from maybe my perspective as maybe other center backs might look on the ball, but doesn't look to make too many mistakes. There haven't been any huge highlights or anything of any big mistakes. It's just from sometimes some of the clearances and certain little bits and pieces that I've seen, he just has a bit of clumsiness about him. And maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe other people don't. They could be seeing something different than me. And then also passing under pressure with that really poor pass completion percentage, and just maybe tied into the clumsiness that I might have been reading into. I wonder if he is, a skilled center back of being able to play out from the back, play under pressure in case we are put under that type of pressure by many Premier League sides. That's a common thing that he'll have to face, and a common thing that he'll have to deal with is having to make quick decisions and knowing what to do before he even receives the ball. And we've seen Radu Dragusin really struggle in this department in the Premier League and just in games in general. When you do put him under pressure, he tends to panic and tends to make poor decisions and just even sometimes give the ball away really unnecessarily. So Kevin Danso, let's hope that's not the case with him, but it's something worth noting, I'd say, with that clumsiness that I brought up earlier. But there you are, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video back. He looks to be a very physical and mobile center back that should fit Postecoglou's very, very physically demanding play style, right? He can track back, he can get in front of people, he can bully people. It's a very physically demanding role that Postecoglou asks of his center back. So he looks like in the physical side of things can can perform there. He, I think, looked a little bit concerning when it came to maybe his possession numbers. I don't think he's bad by any means in possession, but I don't know if he's going to be anywhere close to Romero or anything like that. So I guess we'll find out whether he is someone that can improve in that area or if these are maybe just numbers that don't tell the whole story. Tottenham did really need a center back this window, anyways. I felt like we needed probably a left sided defender more than anything. But with the recent Radu Dragic news, it looked like Spurs are very worried about who we'll have as a backup to Romero, or as also competition for Romero for the remainder of this season. So Kevin Danso, I guess, needed to happen, or at least we need to bring someone in like him. And so for the remainder of the season, it looks like it will be Romero, Van de Ven, Kevin Danso, and Ben Davis. I wonder what that means for Luka Vuskovic, who we know is very, very talented and will be in the team this summer. Alfie Dorrington, what does that mean for him and his future, as well as also Ashley Phillips, some very talented center backs there. Wasn't really too much money that Spurs spent, 25 million. We see that fee all the time nowadays. It's almost like one of the new sort of cheaper fees, if you will. He's an up and coming center back that isn't too young, but isn't too old, but has had some really good seasons for Racing Club Lens. So it seems like this is a good progressive move for him, in his career. He's had some recent Champions League experience, and he was also a part of a very successful, very cool to watch journey and project at Lens. So I think that could make it also worth it. Maybe he could see something happening here at Spurs and wants to try to join that as well. But let me know what you think, and let me know what you think if Ange will even play him in our Liverpool game. Is Romero fit and ready for it? I'm not sure yet. So will Kevin Danso feature as soon as that game? One of our biggest games of the season, if not our biggest game of the season thus far. So let me know, everybody, what you think of this signing in the comments below. Smash that like button as well, and I'll see you next time. Come on, you Spurs, and welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, Kevin Danso.